Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. For today's cards, I did very simple, sort of messy watercoloring, intentionally messy, using some of the intense liquid colors from Bibi Cameron. I've done videos on these already when they were first released. I don't remember when. My sense of time, as always, it's gone. But I will try and find those videos and I'll link to them in the end screen so you can check them out if you're interested. And then I combine them with this big Botanicals stamp set. This is another one of those sets where the images almost can look intimidating to some because of like the detail, and they're big florals. Hello. Honestly, I find these are actually the easiest types of images to color because the stamp detail, it's so detailed, it's already there. You're not just doing an outline where all you see is the coloring. So, very simple watercoloring. There's even a little splatter stamp right there. I used that because why not? But I also did my own splatter because, of course. So, everything I used, as always, will be listed and linked in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links, end up placing an order, I do get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. That is what helps pay the bills, keeps the lights on, enables me to keep bringing out content. And let's get into making these cards. So this big Botanicals stamp set has these two large florals, which I'm always a fan of. And I am going to stamp them onto some watercolor paper. This time I'm using Strathmore watercolor paper. Honestly, I just grabbed a pack. Sometimes it really does matter, depending on what you're doing. The better quality the watercolor paper, the better results you'll get. But more often than not, I just kind of grab whatever's handy. And today, it was this Strathmore watercolor paper. So I stamped the florals with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and I did not heat emboss them. Most of the time when I'm going to watercolor and I'm using this ink, I heat emboss it, or just heat emboss the image in general. You guys have heard me say a million times. I like the raised edges that the heat embossing gives because it keeps things a little more contained, makes life a little easier. However, like I said in the intro, I'm going to do this messy on purpose. So I just stamp the images, and then for the watercoloring, I'm using these intense liquid colors. So these are just liquid watercolors, and I used a variety, so I'll link to them. And like I mentioned, I'll hunt down my other videos and I'll link to those at the end screen that I did using some of these. So for the tulip, I'm using scarlet red and red, just two different shades of red. Just for funsies, and a paintbrush. And I first just kind of painted water. As you saw, I went right outside the lines on purpose. When it comes to messy watercolor, it is something I definitely encourage people to try, especially if they, are starting to dabble with watercolor. Being intentionally messy is intimidating. I know when I first, would see other makers and other watercolorists do that sort of a thing, I was like, how, why? Because it's just habit. It's been drilled in since elementary school, stay with inside the lines. Trust, it's fun. It's fun. And plus when you're intentionally messy, then you don't notice if you do end up accidentally getting stuff where you don't want it. It's like, it was all intentional. So I just painted on. And then I went in with, a bit more color, a little less water on that, the petals of the tulip, just to intensify the actual image area. And then for the greenery, I'm doing the exact same thing. So I painted it first with water, and then I went over it. I'm using emerald and green intense colors. And I used the emerald first, I think. Honestly, I don't even know, whatever the lighter shade was. Because I was just dropping on my palette and doing my thing, but kind of went back and forth, mixed them a little bit. And then just like with the reds, I swirled my brush in the color and splattered it right there. So in some areas that are still wet, it'll just kind of absorb. But then around the image, I've got that bit of splatter. And then rinse and repeat, literally. Rinse my brush out, went on to the purples. And for the purples, I'm using violet and Purple Rain, which are two very different shades of purple. The Purple Rain, that's that first one I'm putting on there, is a much more sort of lilac-y shade. And then the violet is a very like true purple. So I mixed them together and kind of went back over it just so that it was a little more cohesive, you know? So that's also the beauty of doing things intentionally messy. It's like, let them mix, let them do, you know, their thing. Add that bit of splatter. The greenery, I used the same two colors, did the exact same thing. Just painted on a bit of water and then added the green. Pretty sure that was emerald. I'm honestly not positive just because, you know, I made this and then I put things away. Y'all. Anyway, painted all the things. And that was it. Super simple. And then I let these dry. They need to be dry. These panels originally were like roughly like 4.5 by 6 inches because with my watercolor paper, most of the time, most watercolor paper is 9 by 12. So I cut them into like quarters. So I cut them in half and cut them in half again. So most of my watercolor panels are usually like 4.5 by 6 inches. So just to give you an idea how big these stamps are. And then I die cut them. Once they were dry, I die cut them with the second largest rectangle wafer die from Simon's A2 Rectangles die set. So I used the second largest die. So these panels are now slightly smaller than A2 sized. So after I die cut them, I was looking at the set more and I realized they had like these little, I don't know what you call them, like label stamps basically. And I just stuck those to acrylic blocks and just stamped them on this with the Nocturne ink. And then there's that little splatter stamp in there too, which is always fun. Obviously, I love splatter, you know? I go freehand splatter all the time. But a stamp is always nice. In fact, I remember way back in the, you know, in the dark ages of stamping, I used to have a little stamp set that was just splatter. So honestly, I think I come by it quite honestly because it was one of my favorite stamps. I used to use it all the time. You know, back when I was not comfortable with splatter, because at least, you know, with a stamp, it's more controlled. I get it. So I took that little stamp and just added, you know, some custom black splatter, just using that Nocturne ink. Why not? It's fun. So I added that. And then I'm going to stamp with these intense colors. I just put a bit onto my little palette there and I put this sort of like little label frame image from that stamp set onto an acrylic block and I just pressed it into the watercolors and stamped that. Obviously, you're not going to get a perfect image, you know, a crisp image more like, because I'm stamping with an actual full-on liquid, but it's fun. It's fun. I need to remember to do these sorts of things more often. It's just a different look. Because again, embrace the imperfection. So with the purples, with the red I think I'd used like just a straight up red. But with the purples, I mixed the two. Just did a really thin line of it on there. And then I was just tapping the stamp into that liquid watercolor and then just pressed it. This I'm just doing on just regular smooth white cardstock. And then I stamped a couple of the sentiments from that set inside those frames with the Nocturne ink. And then to build like the actual phrases for the fronts of the cards, I took the two large sentiments and I've got some black cardstock and I'm going to put that in my MISTI, lined up the stamps. I used my anti-static powder tool on the cardstock that just keeps the embossing powder from clinging to anything other than the stamped images. And I stamped the sentiments with just some white pigment ink. Could have used clear embossing ink. I just happened to have my white pigment ink still sitting out on my desk. So that's what I used. So I stamped the images the sentiments with the white pigment ink and then coated them with detail white embossing powder. Tapped off the excess, melted that with my heat tool. And then I took my microfiber cloth and just buffed away that excess anti-static powder because it shows up very much on dark cardstock and especially on black cardstock. So buffed that all away. And then I used the coordinating wafer dies to die cut the sentiments. And then there's also a coordinating wafer die for that little label frame image. So I'm going to die cut all of these to build my sentiments for both of these cards. So one's going to be just a generic like thinking of you card and the other one's going to be a birthday card. So line those up on my little magnetic mat here for my Empress. And then I can run these through my die cut machine and then I can die cut the second label and that will build my sentiments. And then once I've got that, I pulled out some black gingham ribbon. I don't have a link for this. I've had this in my stash for a while, and I kind of forgot. Oh yeah, honestly, I did forget about it. I've been using baker's twine so much, but yeah, have this little black gingham ribbon. So I am going to wrap this around my card front here and then tie it in a bow. And that's another video I've got on my channel. That one of my original, like OG, very, very old videos. One of the first, not the first, but one of the first ones I did was how to tie a bow with ribbon on your cards. So that method, still the same 20 years later. So anyway, tied that in a bow. And then for the sentiments, I am going to just put some thin foam squares on the back of these so that it gives them a little bit more dimension. And then I'm just going to kind of adhere them above, like kind of right, almost on top of the ribbon, really. So I'm going to pop these into place. I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other card front, so I'm not going to bother filming that. And then Simon Says Stamp just released this little tool. I'm going to show it in a second. It is like an adhesive backer remover tool. I already forget the name of it. I'll have it linked next to the Big Mama foam tape. That's what I'm putting on the back of this, is Big Mama foam tape. This tool is cool. It was in the box with Simon's new release that's coming out in the near future, and I had no idea what this thing was. I was like, what is this? I don't get it. But they showed it. Simon showed it on their recent class video and explained it, and Callie showed what it does, and I was like, this is brilliant. So it's got these little like teeth on the bottom of it, and you can use it to help lift the backing off of foam tape or foam squares, etc. Game changer. Now, I don't necessarily struggle anymore with removing the backer on things, but sometimes, it's annoying. And so that's all you do. You just drag it like that, and it lifts the edge of the backing paper. Brilliant. This is going to become, usually I hold out on new tools. I don't show them to you guys until I'm finally convinced to use them. I just, I'm set in my ways, all of that. I love this little thing. And it's small, so it's not some big crazy tool that I need to make a bunch of room for. This is just going to go right next to my bone folder, and you can actually use it as a little bone folder as well. But I'm just going to use it to help, remove the backing, to help protect our nails, which, as I'm doing this voiceover for you guys, I have so much dirt under my fingernails right now. It's shameful. Shameful. I need to scrub them. But, if you like to protect your nails, or if you just struggle, you just struggle with the backing paper, because every once in a while, there's certain foam tapes that just the backing paper doesn't want to go away. You can't get it lifted up for life view. This tool is sweet. I'm impressed. Anyway, back to what I was doing. I've got some panels of white cardstock here, and I'm stamping these images with just some positively saturated inks. So for the tulip, I used blush and celery ink, and you can't see it because I'm sitting off camera. But I kind of get, when I'm doing something like this, like when I'm using multiple inks on an image, I'm kind of got my face down level with the stamp. So I'm holding the lid of my MISTI kind of, up a little bit, and then my face is down so I can see the corner of my ink pad, because that's where I'm able to get into, narrow little areas, etc. Like that's what I'm doing right there. So you can't see it, but my face is like right down there, and I can see the corner of my ink pad, and I was inking it up with 2 different colors. So for this one, it was lilac and celery. And I missed a couple spots, so I just took the corner of my ink pad, added the ink, and there we go. And this, again, these images, like the detail of them, stamping them just in color ink like this. If you want to do some clean and simple cards, you could stamp a bunch like that, stamp a sentiment in black, and you've got a nice little card set. Love it. Love it. Those are going on the insides of the cards, though, because I made my cards out of black cardstock. They're top folding A2 black note cards, so they're 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And then those panels I stamped with the florals and the inks are going to go on the inside, which I'll show at the very end. And then as a final, second to final little embellishment, I pulled out my very much used Adeline butterfly little wafer die. And I die cut the wings from Simon's Ice Vellum. And then the body is just from scraps of black cardstock. And then I'm just going to adhere these to each of the cards because they're pretty. The vellum's shimmery, and it just gives it a little extra something. Also, it's because I couldn't find my dragonfly wafer die. It's around here somewhere. Y'all, I've had a lot on my plate, and that's just another one of the things that just seem to grow legs and walk away, because that's one I don't normally put away, but I obviously put it somewhere, and I'm really annoyed. But this is another favorite anyway. And yeah, it's always fun to die cut ones like this from like pretty shimmery vellums. And once I got those adhered, my final embellishment was some positively saturated gems. So I've got cherry positively saturated gems for the tulip card, and then lilac positively saturated gems for the hyacinth card. So I laid those out onto each of these card fronts. Once I was happy with it, I'm going to pick them up with my little embellishment wand, put little dabs of craft tacky glue down, and then press those into the glue, and then let the glue dry. And once that's dry, these cards are complete. So, like I mentioned in the intro and during the voiceover, I will have links to the other videos I did using these intense colors. Those will be in the end screen at the very end of the video that you can check out if you're interested. And then all the supplies and everything I used. Again, look at the detail. The detail. Love. Chef's kiss. Anyway, all the things I used are listed and linked in the description box below the video, so you can just expand that and check it out if you're interested. Thank you all so very much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. It helps a lot, and I very much appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!